Welcome to Chapter 4 of the Secret Lore of the Lakota Shamans. This won't always be about the Lakota, however, just mostly. Why Lakota? Because that's my calling. I've been called to Lakota ways probably because that was my first exposure 30 years ago. I was invited to a Uipi ceremony 29 years ago and smoked my first pipe at that time. My teacher then was a Lakota shaman who sundanced on the Rosebud Reservation with Bill Eaglefeather and Frank Foolscrow. So that is essentially, I think, why I'm called to Lakota ways more than others. I've had the opportunity to follow other paths, in particular the Blackfoot way. I have Blackfoot teachers, and I'm part of a Blackfoot community. I could pursue that, but it doesn't really call to me in the same way that the Lakotas do. And I find the Lakota culture and ways of thinking to be very profound. So I'm happy with going in this direction. My own background is I have a pretty strong background in Western esoteric Hermetic tradition as well, so there's some overlap there. I also have a fairly strong exposure to Eastern, in particular Hindu practices like yoga, the 8 limbs, Ashtanga. So there's overlap there too, and surprisingly I find a lot of similarities between Hindu thinking philosophy and the Lakota ways. There is some theories that the Lakota peoples are actually the same peoples as the Tibetans, and there may be some reason why their traditions are similar. But that's another topic for another day. Essentially, well, I wanted to start Chapter 4 by talking a bit about the importance of humility. And like I said, in Hindu ways, in my yoga teachings, that's important there as well. So it's not something remarkable or remarkably different. But to me it is profound. I grew up, in privileged white circumstances. Even though I grew up on the prairie, I had good, community public schooling. And public schooling in the U.S. is all about competition, and I didn't do so well physically competing with the others, but I did do extremely well competing with them mentally or intellectually, academically. So as a result of not being able to communicate compete so well physically, mainly because I had childhood asthma at the time, my own reaction to that, my compensating for that, was a certain amount of arrogance. An air of superiority, a big ego, let's say. The need to always be right and to prove that I'm right. And that drove me to pursue an academic career so that I could hold my own with others and show and demonstrate that what I was saying was true and right. That has led me to a lonely life, and other people will sometimes make first judgments that I might be or acting superior or stuck up even. That has been one of my problems in the past, and so that's one of my issues, was to learn to be humble. And it's been a hard issue. It's been a hard problem for me to work on. But it is key to Lakota ways. In Lakota ways, no one is better than anybody else. Competition is not so much valued. They did like to compete, in games and things, but I don't think it was valued as much as it is in the Western dominant culture. But so humility is key to personal power, and personal power is spiritual power. It comes from spirit. Spirit won't give you power unless you're humble. If you're arrogant and egotistical, you won't go anywhere in these ways. So that was probably my hardest lesson to learn, and that's why it's taken me so long, probably. But I wanted to talk about that first. Talk a bit about, where I'm coming from. I don't claim to be a shaman. I was watching over the first 3 chapters, and it sort of appears like I'm coming off as a shaman, and I don't want to do that, because I'm not a shaman. I'm not labeled as a shaman by others, and I'm not labeling myself or calling myself a shaman. In fact, I call myself an Iksha Wichasha, which means a simple man. That means someone who is not a Wichasha Wakan or a Wopier. I want to go out of my way to make that clear. That's my task. That's my journey to demonstrate my humility in that way. There are various reasons for this. One of them is that in the current climate, there are these things called plastic shamans, and plastic shamans are predominantly white, New Age, spiritual types who are crossing the boundary of legitimate practice to actually being appropriating inappropriately some other cultures, sacred practices. This could be said, in the current climate, there are people accusing yoga teachers in the West of culturally appropriating, these Hindu teachings. It's also being accused of, white New Age plastic shamans who are appropriating inappropriately the practices of the Peruvian or Amazonian curanderos or plant healers. For mostly these things are done for money, for profit, and I'm very careful, or want to be very careful, to not do that. I personally have a vow of poverty. I do not charge anything for my teachings or for my practice. Do I practice healing? If someone comes to me and asks me for help, I'll help them. That is one of my vows. But I just wanted to be clear about this, that the channel is called The Secret Lore of the Lakota Shamans, but that doesn't mean I am one of those. I think probably if I was one of those, I would have a vow of secrecy and I wouldn't be able to reveal it. But since I am not one of those, I can do that. I can reveal what I know because I don't have a vow saying that I can't. So far, anyway. Somebody says that on this path, no one ever really reaches a point of proficiency. If you were to claim that you were proficient, then that's ego talking again. And what we try to do is not speak from the monkey mind and the ego, but from the heart, or the third eye. When somebody said that, you know, when do you graduate from these ways? When do you finally graduate? Well, you finally graduate when you die. You know, when you die and you move on to the next level, that's when you graduate from this class. And who are the teachers of this class? Spirit above all is the teacher. Spirit is driving everything, but it uses vessels to teach with, and those vessels can be all of the people around us. Everyone around us is a teacher, teaching us lessons every day if you're paying attention. So that's what I wanted to start out with. I also wanted to say that, you know, I've watched over the first 3 chapters, and I'm getting used to it. I'm sort of pleasantly surprised at the way it's working out. I was very reticent at first to start this, and very nervous about it, very self-conscious. But I think if I can just let loose and let it flow, this will be good for all concerned. I actually learned that lesson a couple of years ago. After I came back from Standing Rock, I went down to Los Angeles to teach a class on my experience. And when I did that, I very consciously made a decision to teach the class in a different way than what I had been used to. I had been used to teaching a class very organized, very Western mentality. You make an outline, you use note cards, and you follow the outline and speak from it. And you know, it's kind of like preparing for a TED Talk. And inevitably for me, those classes tended to be very dry, and I wasn't very happy with them. But something told me, I was going through something of a spiritual awakening at the time, after coming out of Standing Rock. And something told me, probably Spirit itself, to just let loose, let go, surrender to Spirit. And what I actually did in a class, I had a 2-hour class, it seems like it was, 2 or 2.5 hours. And I smudged the room before I began, and I called into the spirits in the room. So essentially we were in ceremony. And then I just let Spirit speak through me. I just let Spirit talk and just let it go. And it went very well. And remarkably, I got all the material in exactly the amount of time allotted. So I'm sort of cultivating that same approach with this video, with this channel. We'll see how it goes. I apologize if I'm a little nervous and stammering over my words, but it is something new for me, and I'm not really that practiced at it. Maybe as I keep doing it, I'll get more comfortable, and maybe you can hang in there with me and see if there's any growth that way. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was Let's talk about Taku Skan for a moment. Taku Skan is the second of the 16 Wakantankas that we've talked about. It's also called Tunkasila. It's also called Grandfather Sky. Its color is blue. The literal translation of Skan is movement or motion. It's what gives motion to everything in the world that's moving, that's alive. I guess you could say it gives time even to the world, because time is the measure of motion, right? I think it was Aristotle who said that. But Taku Skan and the shamans themselves just call it with a shorthand Skan. And that's what I was meaning when I first said that a lot of these words, these Lakota words, the average Lakota would know the words. They know the word Skan, but they don't typically know the shaman understanding of what Taku Skan is. So as we said, Taku Skan is really important because he's the one that gives us our life. He gives us the four parts of the soul when we're born, and he's the one that we pray to in the lodge when we pray to Tunkasila. I'll talk a moment about some of the ways that I pray when I pray. One of my main teachers has been Frank Foolscrow, and as a matter of fact, over the last summer I visited his grave and spent some time there. This is on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota. Frank Foolscrow is the preeminent Lakota shaman. He had 405 spirit helpers. He was a healer. He was a plant healer. He would put people up on the hill for their Homblacia or vision quests. He was the intercessor of Sundance. One of the main characters that's responsible for bringing the Sundance back after it was illegal in the United States for so long. He interceded in the Wounded Knee occupation in 1973. He went and spoke before Congress, and I think he did a prayer to open the day at Congress once. He was the ceremonial chief, in addition for the Lakota peoples. He lived to be 99 years old. Went through 2 wives, outlived both of them. So he's sort of an admirable, character. He's a role model, if you will. Foolscrow wrote 2 books, and I read both books a long time ago, probably almost 30 years ago, after getting on this path. And one of the things that I picked up very early on was his method of praying to the spirits. And what he would do is he would address them in order. You can pray typically with a pipe, but you don't need a pipe to pray. You can pray anytime, anywhere. What I used to do was I would pray with a cigarette, and I would offer the tobacco to the directions and ask them to come and share the tobacco with me. And I've been doing that for a very, very long time, and I do it in the order in which I understood that Foolscrow did it. And what he would do first is he would address Wakantanka, because Wakantanka is the most high, the chief of the gods, the highest. He's all of them, all right. So I would address him first. Wakantanka, please come and share this tobacco with me. and then I would address Tunkasila. Tunkasila, please come share this tobacco with me. Now, for Fool's Crow, those are two different things. And that was an interesting thing to learn, too, because a lot of people think Wakantanka and Tunkasila are the same thing. Fool's Crow made it clear that those were two different things. And we've talked previously about the 16 Wakantankas, and now Taku Skan is you know, he's the number 2 spirit. He's not Wakantanka. He's part of Wakantanka. And then when I pray, I'll pray third of all to the west, because that's where we pray to when we're praying in the directions. We start in the west. So I'd say, Grandfather West, please come share this tobacco with me. And I'd move to the north. Grandfather North, please come share this tobacco with me. Move to the east. Grandfather East, please come share this tobacco with me. Move to the south. Grandfather South, please come and share this tobacco with me. Grandmother Earth, please come and share tobacco with me. And then once those spirits are called in, then you can pray. And this is very similar to the Western tradition, which calls in the 4 watchtowers, or the 4 directions, usually the 4 archangels. The archangels are assigned to each of the directions. Wicca does the same thing. I understand most pagan rituals that involve calling in, creating a sacred space by initially calling in the directions. So this is very similar in that way. That's the way I've been doing it for 30 years. I've been doing it that way for decades. Much later on, it's become much more sophisticated, and I do it. I've learned the Lakota calling spirit song, the Lakota four directions song, and it essentially does the same thing, but it's a much more formalized ritual way. And we can talk about that more. Looks like we're getting to about the time I have to keep these chapters down to about 20 minutes so that it's a manageable file size for transferring and processing and whatnot. So I'm going to have to stop here, but we will continue tomorrow with chapter 5 of the secret lore of the Lakota Shamans. Aho, matakuya.